Okay, so welcome to the 2023 State of Digital. There's a lot here, folks. We will be publishing this along with all of our commentaries, so no need to take notes. Let's get into it. Let's do it. Okay, so Eric Seufert famously 2 years ago coined this phrase, everything is an ad network, reflecting on this notion that, every company that had consumer data seemed to be launching a media business. And so this was our homage to him in Times Square. But again, we're sort of taking that to another level with ad tech is eating the world, just not cookies. So that's our major concept.
Yeah, and look, over the last few years, Terry and I have been thinking a lot about this. Like, what are the keys to having a scaled digital ad ecosystem? We really boil it down to three simple components. It starts with consumer adoption, then leads into where is there access to data and identity, and finally, it requires the automation and performance technology to get things going. And these were the conditions precedent that led to the strength of the open web and the walled gardens, right? They started with tons and tons of consumers. They had access to data, third-party data in the open web, first-party data in the walled gardens, and both had tons of automation and performance capabilities, programmatic in the open web, and the ML and AI capabilities inside the walled gardens. And look, the scale speaks for itself. There's over $500 billion of global ad spend across this ecosystem. But some of that has started to come under fire, right? Between regulation and platform changes, the data and identity ecosystem is having loss of signal, and that's going to impact the automation and performance in this ecosystem. In many ways, we are shifting from this third-party data ecosystem through the filter of platform changes and regulation and moving to this world of first-party data and data collaboration. So if you think about it, in a third-party data world, what did we have? We had scale of data. It was ubiquitous, and it was very easy for anyone to use. What we didn't have was a lot of fidelity around that data, loss of control, and privacy was certainly a problem. In this new world, these are pretty much completely flipping, right? We've got the fidelity. We know who the consumers are. We've got a lot more control around our data, and it's better for privacy. But scale is being very challenging. First-party data is not going to scale like third-party data. Ubiquity is a challenge as people are using different identifiers, and frankly, it's just going to be a lot harder. In many ways, it's as if we're going from this open party where anyone could join to a red velvet rope. And look, if you want to get a ticket to the party, make sure you're at the data and identity panel. If you can click, it'll come up at 2:45 today. Look, last year, sort of culminating of what this is this shift from a bifurcated digital world from walled gardens and open web into the hedged garden ecosystem. And so that's having sort of broader implications into the technologies and capabilities that are required. In this new paradigm, we need to focus on some new things. Data collaboration, we're going to say it over and over again, is critical. This was pretty much the theme of the entire ramp-up conference this year. But we're also seeing some changes in the power dynamics between demand and supply. So in a third-party data world, demand had a lot of control, especially in the open web, as they could find their audiences anywhere. But as we shift towards a first-party ecosystem, a lot of that power is driving towards the supply side, especially premium supply who have direct relationships with their customers.
It's like scarcity. So in CTV, you've got scarcity of media inventory, and in something like commerce media, you've got scarcity of data. Either way, it accrues power.
We're also moving to alternative methods, right? So the way we've done targeting and measurement are going to have to change. We're going to see things like attention, creative, contextual, and a lot more probabilistic measuring in particular. And lastly, we're seeing a shift towards sort of black box performance, particularly at the walled gardens. And this is, in the last few years, both Google and Meta have announced these initiatives, PMax at Google and Advantage Plus at Meta, where they're leveraging their AI and ML to drive results. The challenge is they're using their data so integrated into the campaigns that they're saying, just give us our data, give us your money, trust us, we'll send you results.
Kind of like we're back to the ad networks, right? It's,
exactly.
Everything old is new again. And this topic will be discussed at 2 o'clock under Optimization 2.0. But look, it's not good news for everybody, right? The move towards audiences, it's been really challenging for digital publishers. Vice, of course, just this week filing bankruptcy, but they are joining any number of other digital publishers, which sadly, digital first publishers, I should say, that have had a pretty hard go of it. And with some notable exceptions, and some of them are here today. These have had other, great exits, all of them, or trade very highly, and it's great to see that some can make it. Speaking of this sort of horizontal strategy, the whole notion in 2020, I think, but this one's slides from 2021, we sort of pointed out that these companies were creating these end-to-end capabilities, bridging from demand to supply. Largely, the big giants have it, but also smaller companies were doing it via M&A. So demand was buying into supply and vice versa. Well, fast forward to today, and we have seen even more evidence of this. So it's one of those trends that we called early that has completely manifested itself in the marketplace and creates for very different and enhanced competition. Why? Why combine demand with supply? It improves supply path optimization, improves the outcome for the principals, so publishers get better yield, buyers get better returns, and as well, the intermediary captures more margin. Why? Because there's one less mouth to feed. And of course, in a privacy-focused world, greater data husbandry because less hops in between. And we'll be talking about programmatic horizontality at 2:05 in Track B. And listen, SPO, obviously a hot topic these days, is something that we should logically address. There is mass waste in the ecosystem with trillions of bids, and the bid stream is blown up. Just the server costs alone, let alone all the wasted time and energy and, quite frankly, money, makes no sense. So whether you are doing this to save the planet or to make more money, I don't care what your politics are, it makes sense.
Look, both of them are green, so.
Both of them are green.
Green.
And speaking of which, sustainability will be discussed at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Look, the reason we built this construct was not really to focus on programmatic and walled gardens, but it was really how do we approach new channels that are coming to the market. And so we take this lens of the consumer adoption, data identity, and automation to think about other channels too. CTV, commerce media, audio are just a few. And we'll start with CTV.
All right, let's go. A couple years ago, the advent, the real spike in growth of streaming, the preponderance of viewership happened in subscription business models, right? The SVOD formats, some dual and some pure AVOD. Fast forward to today, emphasis on the word fast, and we now have an environment where advertising is taking over. Again, ad tech is eating the world. We're going to keep coming back to that theme. And so as you spread in from the coasts and people have fulfilled on subscriptions, largely the growth is coming from ad-supported media. And speaking of fast, this is a channel that has grown at incredible rates over just the last few years.
Yeah, didn't you make a prediction about this?
Yeah, I got it wrong. Okay, fine. When fast was, I didn't think, I got this one wrong. I did not think consumers in a streaming context were going to put up with the 18 minutes an hour of ad load, but I guess I was wrong. They do, and they love it, and watch for more fast channels, because now think about it. You're a content owner and you have a library of media. Boom, create a fast channel. And that will be discussed at 11:20. Okay, one of the things that we called out in December was the notion that linear TV's conversion to streaming would in fact inflect should one of the digital giants win the Sunday ticket. Well, at least the DirecTV Sunday ticket was won by Google in December. And as we pointed out, the NFL is like the duct tape holding together the TV bundle. And so now that that is broken, I think kind of all bets are off. We're going to see an acceleration of shift. Now think about it, right? We have a world today of roughly 75-25 viewership linear to streaming. the linear is not going to zero, folks. It's not going to zero. There's a floor of, I don't know, 20, 25% near as I can tell. Heck, there's parts of the nation that don't even have broadband. So it will move to a preponderant of streaming, but now think about the ad inventory. If today we have X amount of ad inventory, it's going to go down because of the lower ad load, right? There's less commercials in a streaming context. Fine, it'll go back up because a few folks are launching new AVOD channels. So we get this new normal, but that's still below where we were. And the last time I checked, in corporate America, no one ever leaves tens of billions of dollars on the table. So we believe what we're going to see, as I first made point of at Dave Morgan's Simulmedia Salon in December, is that we're going to see what we're calling recategorized TV. And it's going to start, so what's known and sold and bought, most importantly, as TV, Kirk McDonald's just perked up his ears, linear, AVOD, and FAST, that's fine, but watch for these other channels to be sold as television, and it starts with YouTube. So you notice this is the second year that YouTube has done an upfront, not a new front, an upfront, because they want to play at the big boy table of television and watch for these other channels to migrate in that direction as well. I mean, y'all know if you have kids that they spend all their time on their phones. TikTok has been exploding in that regard, and again, they're coming after those TV dollars. And yeah, we're heading for a consequential upfront. There is, of course, the measurement sort of war, if you will, between the old measurement, Nielsen, and the new measurement that the JIC and these competitive firms are doing. We'll see how much that survives post Linda Yaccarino, but the point is there's tension, and tension is good, because at a minimum, it's going to improve Nielsen. Nielsen won once an announcement, then a PowerPoint, and now it's a product coming into the market, which is good. And then secondly, there is this sort of difference as to whether we think TV is going to be bidded. I recall 2013, again, at a Simulmedia Salon series that I did with Jack Myers. This is 10 years ago, and we were talking about the future and suggesting that TV publishers weren't going to fall for it like display and let their inventory be openly bidded.
We got to do more of these Simulmedia Salons.
I know. And what we're talking about today is these fascinating intersections. So yes, you've got the usual suspects in the big sort of national CTV marketplace and ad serving, but there's these interesting intersections with the overlap with performance advertising, local advertising, commerce media, gaming, and really fascinating, increasingly, distribution. And yes, we did add the Telly logo on there yesterday due to the launch of that new and exciting firm. Okay, so this we're going to be talking about at 2:45 today. This is important, folks, for these big media companies. It's like they're flying a plane and they have to swap out engines mid-flight and keep the plane afloat because they haven't quite figured out the new paradigm of the streaming business model, and if they don't, bad things could happen, but we won't go there. So it's crucially important they get it right.
Great, now let's talk about commerce media. So, click there. Look, retail media is arguably one of the, has the most zeitgeist in the sector, and it's warranted. If you look at the numbers here, it has accelerated faster than any of these other mega trends in digital, growing from $1 billion to $30 billion in spend in just 5 years. That's half the time of social, a third of the time of search. And as we said, this all starts with consumers. So before we ever talked about Amazon as an advertising channel and the amount of spend they had, we talked about the fact that Amazon had 55% of digital shoppers coming to them first to start their digital shopping journey. And that meant they own the consumer relationship and they own the intent, and therefore they can monetize it with advertising. And it's started to take a huge share. So this data out from Work Media a few weeks ago showed that globally, retail media is now 25% of the search market. And that's just an incredible feat because search has always been the one thing that we can't touch. And this was before we had the new wave of AI and all the other threats impacting search. And the reason for this fast acceleration is the difference in the data. So we talked about this last year where commerce media echoes these strengths of search and social with scaled consumers, lots of first-party data, and the automated performance around driving ROI and driving efficiency. But it's the endemic closed-loop attribution capabilities that make it so strong. The next frontier here with commerce media is this shift off-platform. So a lot of it started on-site initially. Now we're moving off-site and doing so via data. Amazon's really led the way here again. So if you think about Amazon, started with consumers, bottom of the funnel. With Prime, they moved up funnel with Amazon Ads. A couple years ago, they bought Seismic, moved off-platform with Amazon DSP, and then the last few years have announced this initiative with Buy with Prime. Now this is initially focused on getting logistics, improving the user experience, and driving that incredible value to other merchandisers. But ultimately, as we all know, it's a massive data opportunity as well and will feed their broader media strategy. And it's not just Amazon. Even companies like Walmart are thinking about things very differently as a platform. A few weeks ago, Walmart's CFO announced that within 5 years, he expects more of their profits to come from their ad sales and tech services than from selling goods in their 10,000 stores. So just a major change for one of the largest commerce players. We talk a lot about retail media in this sector, but really this is just the tip of the spear. It's a component of the broader commerce media trend and ultimately this broader trend around first-party data. And like we said in the beginning, first-party data requires collaboration. This is going to be an ecosystem that is going to leverage technology, a lot of different partnerships, a lot of different platforms working together, and we've seen a ton of this. And just the other week, put a couple fun names to a few ones that happen all in 1 week. So Amazon and Pinterest coming together to close the loop, Shopify and Criteo coming together to open the gates, and Trade Desk and Attain working to connect the dots on consumer purchases. Please, everyone who's emailing me to get their own fun name, you can stop. That's where we'll end them. But ultimately, what we've seen is that commerce media has become a necessity for everyone in ad tech. Given all this opportunity with independent technology into this ecosystem, we've all of a sudden jumped from a third or a quarter of the public companies talking about it to almost everyone having to address it in their earnings calls. And then there's the next frontier. We focus a lot on the digital side of things, but the massive opportunity around consumer engagement and data for many of these retailers is actually their in-store experience. And there's getting to be a lot of traction there, and we've already seen 2 deals just this year with Criteo Brand Crush and Mood Media buying Vibenomics, so a lot more to come. Commerce Media Track will be at 12:05 p.m., so make sure you're there to hear even more about this sector. Quickly on audio. So this is one that on a consumer basis, I think we all know, right? We all consume our audio digitally. It's about 20% of the digital time spent. And yet it's always lagged behind from an advertising perspective, primarily monetized via subscription. If you just were to bring this back up, that's a $45 billion opportunity. And we're now in this world where we're shifting from third-party data to first-party data platforms. And these are some very large first-party data platforms who control this ecosystem. So a lot of opportunity there, and we'll be talking to Sheila later today on this topic.
I'm hearing echoes of Mary Meeker.
On the creator economy, look, the creator economy has now gotten too big to ignore. It's about $6.2 billion of spend expected this year. Again, this is driven first and foremost by the consumer adoption. So I thought this chart by Benedict Evans was fascinating. It showed the comparison of an average weekly Mr. Beast video compared to the top Netflix shows with time spent, just on different percentage completions. And note, none of these are 100% completion rates on time watched without, and it's one of the top shows, or would be one of the top shows on YouTube. The other thing we're seeing is this shift from creators from just sponsoring to actually building the companies themselves. Ryan Reynolds has done this very well, 3 exits in the last few years with Mint Mobile, Aviation, and Maximum Effort. You've got Mr. Beast raising a massive round built on his brand and the companies he's going to build underneath it. And you even have it in the fitness Instagram game with Kayla Itsinas selling her company for $400 million a few years ago.
And then AI and creative tech. This is one that we think changes everything, as we said at the outset. Think about the power of combining data and creative with AI, with the sort of afterburners, if you will. I recently spoke at an agency conference, and I posed the question, you know, is AI a threat or an opportunity? And obviously the answer is yes. And so there's going to be some turbulence along the way, but I think net, we get there. And here's the most exciting thing. I think this is an industry, the marketing industry is obsessed with this notion of efficiency, making things marginally cost less. Whoop-de-frickin' do. I mean, usually with a focus on media and data, there's been billions of investments, billions of deals. I know we did most of them. And that's all well and good, but it doesn't capture the broader picture. The broader picture shows the part of the iceberg that's underneath the water surface, and that's efficacy, which is largely a focus on creative. So you could think of it as what you see, it makes it cheaper, and what's under the surface, creative, makes it better. And I would associate the number 10 with both of these. On the top, 10%, good, fine. At the bottom, 10x, okay? So when I say the afterburners, when AI gets applied to creative and it addresses efficacy in media and marketing, buckle up, because it's a whole new world. And the only way to get there is with creative technology, and that's why we're particularly excited by some of the creative technology companies that we have here speaking today. What does AI do? It essentially drains the ocean so that you can get at that beautiful 90% of the iceberg below the surface. 11:20 a.m., creative AI and creative tech. And finally, Web3. I think most of you know where I stand on Web3. I'm going to make this short. And by the way, I feel great about my prognostication years ago about Web3. I started in 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, I present a realistic Web3 glossary. Allow me to summarize it for you. Web3 is a made-up name. Crypto is awaiting a legitimate use case. Blockchain, real technology, but not suited for low-value, massive volume, real-time transactions like digital advertising. NFT is a JPEG with provenance. And the metaverse, it doesn't exist. It never did, and it never will. At least not in the context that they think it is. And a DAO is, well, that's just timeshares 2.0, same outcome. Look, honestly, I've been somewhat disappointed. No, not somewhat. I've been substantially disappointed with people who have microphones, who have audiences that talk about trends, because they've all jumped on the bandwagon of every new shiny object and says, yes, this is great. Remember 5G? What a piece of bullshit that was, right? And so we at LUMA are committed to calling balls and strikes. Yep. So as just by way of example, right? Programmatic. 13, 14 years ago, we're talking about how programmatic was going to change media. We said 5G was definitely a ball. That's no good. We're big on CTV. We've been doing that for over 10 years. Commerce media. Connors led the charge there years ago. And AI, we're all bullish in AI, and Web3. Web3 is a wild pitch. It's so ridiculous. Oh shit, we haven't done markets yet. Okay, all right, let's go.
Cool. Well, look, we all know that interest rates have had a massive impact on the markets recently. Public markets reset, constricting capital markets, profitability becoming a necessity, and an asymmetry in the M&A markets. Look, it's been a wild ride in the markets the last few years. Just click. We'll sort of break it down in a couple sections here. So the COVID era, obviously massive spikes. The LUMA AdTech and LUMA MarTech sectors particularly did well, 240%, 93% collectively. Then we went to 22, right, and a big sell-off. And much like the rest of the tech ecosystem, these were hurt hard. Finally, in 2023, we're starting to see some stabilization here. And across the board here, these sectors, LUMA A, LUMA M, and the broader public market sectors are back in the green. We've seen a massive constricting of the capital markets, though. So while we had 18 new public companies across AdTech and MarTech in 2021, since the end of that year, we've had 0. And in the private markets and VC, we've still seen a lot of activity in seed and very early stage funding. But at the later stage growth rounds and certainly higher, the value has gone cut in half in the last year. And so this obviously means profitability has become increasingly important for anyone past that early stage of company formation. We've also seen impact in the M&A markets. Now, this graph doesn't really highlight exactly what's going on because the activity has still been relatively stable, but that's not showing the value. And as Axios pointed out in an article at the end of Q1 of 23 was the lowest value quarter for M&A globally since 2013. It also has had an impact on who is actually doing the buying. So while private equity has been a big part of this ecosystem for a while, in the last year and a half, they've really accelerated. So it's gone from a stable 30, 40% to now 60, 70% of the deals are coming from private equity or private equity-backed businesses. And a bunch of known names that are in the room here and doing a lot of activity in this space. One thing that's very important that's happened over the last year is a stabilization around valuations. So if you were to look, it's obviously been a wild ride in the public markets, but it's also been a wild ride of just the valuations that companies are attracting. While these are changing so much, it is very challenging to get deals done, but we're finally back at a place where we've had 4 quarters of stabilized valuations. Thus, buyers and sellers can start to get back on the same page. And look, for all of us who've been in this ecosystem for a while knows, this is back to where it was before the craziness of 20 and 21, and really right back where it probably should be for rationalized valuations of these tech platforms.
Yeah, and really there are contradictory impacts to sort of deal activity. You've got, of course, these macro uncertainties, and they, have mitigated somewhat, but they continue in a certain way. There's still a war going on. Pandemic's over. Tech sector sell-off, that was a consequence of those macro uncertainties and perhaps a little bit of vibrant valuations in the sector previously. But let's think about the positives, right? We've got structural tailwinds. Private equity being invested in companies is a good thing. It creates deal inertia. And we now have almost 50 public companies in the sector, which is like 4x where we were in 2019. So we've got structural tailwinds and we've got sectoral tailwinds associated with the trends that we outlined earlier, which are basically driving scale, growth, complexity, and dynamics in the ecosystem. So you could kind of think of this as sort of like the past and the current and the future. When will the tailwinds start to take over from the headwinds? We will see. The good news is this quarter, there is no recession. Sorry, folks. 95% of the companies in ad tech and martech beat their Q1 revenue guidance thus far. So we think it's a strong sign of things to come. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is our State of Digital.